Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I was driving home from work on a Friday evening just like any other day. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the road, and I was looking forward to relaxing at home after a long week. Little did I realize my evening was about to take a dramatic turn. As I cruised down Main Street, I noticed flashing lights in my rearview mirror. Sighing, I pulled over to the side of the road, wondering what I could have done wrong. The police officer approached my window, and I rolled it down, ready to cooperate. "Good evening, ma'am. License and registration, please," the officer said politely. That's when something in me snapped. I'd been reading about sovereign citizens online, and suddenly all that information came flooding back. I decided this was my moment to stand up for my rights. "I don't need to show you anything," I declared. "I'm a sovereign citizen, and your laws don't apply to me." The officer looked taken aback. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to cooperate. Please provide your license and registration." I felt a surge of confidence. "No, you listen here. I'm not driving, I'm traveling. This is my personal conveyance, and you have no jurisdiction over me." The situation quickly escalated. I grabbed my phone and started recording, spouting legal jargon I'd memorized from YouTube videos. "I do not consent to this interaction. You are creating joinder without my permission." The officer's patience was wearing thin. "Step out of the vehicle, ma'am." Feeling emboldened, I flung open my car door and jumped out, still filming. "Am I being detained? I demand to speak to your supervisor." As the officer attempted to calm me down, I became more agitated. When he tried to take my arm, I jerked away, accidentally hitting him in the process. That's when everything went sideways. "You're under arrest," he said firmly, reaching for his handcuffs. I panicked. "You can't arrest me. I don't recognize your authority." I tried to dodge him, but he caught my arm. In my struggle, I dropped my phone, shattering the screen. Backup arrived within minutes. 2 more officers joined in, and despite my protests and attempts to wriggle free, they managed to handcuff me and put me in the back of a patrol car. As we drove to the station, reality started to sink in. My heart was pounding, and I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The sovereign citizen videos made it seem so easy, like a get-out-of-jail-free card. But now I was actually going to jail. At the station, I was fingerprinted and photographed. They took my belongings and put me in a holding cell. The cold metal bench was uncomfortable, and the harsh fluorescent lights gave me a headache. I could hear other detainees shouting and banging on the walls. It was nothing like I'd imagined. Hours passed before I was finally brought in for questioning. The detective explained the charges against me: resisting arrest, assaulting an officer, and obstruction of justice. My mind reeled. This was serious. "But I'm a sovereign citizen," I protested weakly. "You can't charge me." The detective sighed. "Ma'am, that's not how the law works. Those sovereign citizen arguments have no legal basis. You're facing some serious charges here." As he laid out the potential consequences: jail time, hefty fines, a criminal record, I felt my sovereign citizen bravado crumbling. What had I done? I spent the night in jail before being released on bail. My car had been impounded, so I had to call a friend for a ride home. As we drove, I couldn't stop replaying the events in my mind. How had things gone so wrong? The following weeks were a nightmare. I had to hire a lawyer, which cost a fortune. My family was furious with me, especially when they found out I'd been spouting sovereign citizen nonsense. My sister, a paralegal, was particularly upset. "Karen, what were you thinking?" she scolded me. "Those sovereign citizen ideas are complete garbage. You could have just shown your license and been on your way." Work wasn't much better. News of my arrest had spread, and my coworkers gave me strange looks. My boss called me into his office, expressing concern about my judgment. I was put on probation, my promotion prospects effectively ruined. The legal process dragged on for months. Each court appearance was humiliating. The prosecutor had bodycam footage of my meltdown, which looked even worse than I remembered. My lawyer tried his best, but the evidence against me was overwhelming. In the end, I took a plea deal. I was sentenced to 6 months in county jail, 2 years of probation, and ordered to pay a $5,000 fine. I also had to complete 200 hours of community service and attend anger management classes. Jail was the worst experience of my life. The loss of freedom, the strict routines, the lack of privacy, it was all unbearable. I shared a cell with 3 other women, all of whom thought my sovereign citizen beliefs were ridiculous. I quickly learned to keep my mouth shut. When I was finally released, I found my life in shambles. I'd lost my job, my apartment, and many of my friends. My criminal record made it nearly impossible to find new employment. I had to move back in with my parents, which was humiliating at my age. The DMV suspended my driver's license for a year, forcing me to rely on public transportation or the goodwill of others to get around. Every time I saw a police car, my heart raced, bringing back memories of that fateful night. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. The community service, which I'd initially resented, turned out to be a positive experience. Working at a local food bank gave me perspective on real problems, making my sovereign citizen phase seem even more foolish. As the months passed, I reflected on how a few minutes of misguided defiance had derailed my entire life. All the sovereign citizen rhetoric I'd absorbed online had done nothing but land me in trouble. I realized how naive I'd been to think I could simply opt out of society's rules. Eventually, I found a new job, though it paid far less than my previous one. I moved into a small apartment and started to regain some independence, but the consequences of my actions lingered. My criminal record continued to haunt me, limiting my opportunities and serving as a constant reminder of my mistake. 1 year after the incident, I ran into the officer who had initially pulled me over. I was at the courthouse, finishing up some paperwork related to my case. He recognized me immediately. "How are you doing?" he asked, surprisingly kindly. Swallowing my anger, I put on my best act. "I'm doing fine," I replied, forcing a smile. "I've learned a lot from this experience." He nodded, seemingly pleased. "I'm glad to hear that. I hope you understand now that those sovereign citizen ideas don't work in the real world." I mumbled an apology, but inside I was seething. As far as I was concerned, I was the victim here. The system had wronged me, not the other way around. As I left the courthouse that day, I felt a renewed sense of injustice. Sure, I'd gone through hell, but it only reinforced my belief that the government was out to get people like me. I hadn't learned anything except that I needed to be smarter about how I expressed my beliefs. Now, when I see sovereign citizen videos online, I feel a mix of envy and frustration. These people are still free to fight the system, while I'm stuck dealing with the consequences of getting caught. But deep down, I still believe in the sovereign citizen ideology. I just need to find a better way to apply it. I know I'll have to be more careful in the future, but I haven't given up. The system may have won this round, but I'm not done fighting. I'll find a way to live by my principles without ending up in jail again. After all, I'm still a sovereign citizen at heart, even if I have to play by their rules for now. Karen had always been anxious about dental appointments. The sounds of the drill, the bright overhead lights, and the sterile smell of the office made her stomach churn. However, she had promised herself that this time would be different. She had made a resolution to take better care of her health, which included regular dental cleanings. As she sat in the waiting room, she tried to calm her nerves by scrolling through her phone, but the anxiety gnawed at her. When her name was called, she took a deep breath and followed the hygienist, a cheerful woman named Lisa, into the examination room. The bright lights were blinding, and the dental chair looked more like a torture device than a place for routine care. Still, Karen tried to reassure herself. "It's just a cleaning," she whispered under her breath. As Lisa began the procedure, Karen felt the familiar tension rising in her chest. The hygienist was gentle at first, but as she moved on to the tougher spots, Karen felt a sharp jolt of pain. "Ow!" she exclaimed, her voice echoing in the small room. "Sorry about that, just a little tartar buildup," Lisa said, her tone friendly and professional. "I'll be as quick as I can." But to Karen it felt like more than just a cleaning. The scraping of the tools against her teeth seemed to intensify, and she couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa was being overly aggressive. "Are you sure you're not hurting me on purpose?" she blurted out, her heart racing. "Of course not, Karen. I'm just doing my job," Lisa replied, trying to maintain her composure. But Karen's mind was racing. What if this was a ploy? What if the entire dental practice was out to get her? The thought spiraled in her head, feeding her paranoia. Suddenly, in a moment of panic, Karen jerked her body away from the chair. With her mouth still full of instruments, she leapt up, startling Lisa and the dentist who had just entered the room. "Stop, you're hurting me," she shouted, her voice muffled. The dentist, a calm man in his 50s, stepped forward. "Karen, please sit down, we're just trying to help you." But Karen was beyond reasoning. She felt trapped, cornered by the very people who were supposed to help her. In a fit of rage, she grabbed the tray of dental tools and hurled it across the room. Instruments clattered to the floor, some even bouncing off the walls, creating a cacophony of chaos. "Get away from me, you're all in on this," she screamed, her voice a mixture of fear and fury. Other patients in the waiting area turned their heads, eyes wide with shock. The receptionist, a young woman named Sarah, stood frozen in disbelief. "Karen, please," Lisa pleaded, trying to approach her slowly. "Let's talk about this." But Karen was not listening. She shoved her way past Lisa and the dentist, rushing toward the supply closet at the back of the office. In a matter of seconds she had slammed the door shut behind her and barricaded it with a heavy cart filled with dental supplies. Inside the closet the darkness enveloped her. Karen's heart raced as she pressed her back against the door, breathing heavily. She could hear the muffled voices of the staff outside, trying to reason with her. "Karen, we just want to help. Please come out," the dentist said, his voice calm but firm. But Karen was not convinced. She felt a surge of power in her anger. "I'll expose you all. I'll tell everyone how you treat your patients," she shouted, her voice echoing in the confined space. The thought of going viral, of having her story heard, fueled her resolve. She imagined the headlines. "Dental office caught hurting patients." As the minutes passed, the tension outside grew. Karen could hear the sound of footsteps and whispers. She knew they were calling for help, but she felt utterly alone. The adrenaline coursing through her veins made her feel invincible, even as fear gripped her heart. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the air. The police had arrived. Karen's heart sank. She had never imagined it would come to this. She could hear the officers speaking with the staff, gathering information about what had transpired. "Karen, we need you to come out," an officer called, his voice steady and authoritative. "You're not in trouble. We just want to talk." But Karen's mind was racing. She felt betrayed by the very people who were supposed to help her. "You're all against me," she shouted back, her voice trembling with anger and fear. "I won't let you take me." The officers exchanged glances, unsure of how to proceed. They could hear the panic in her voice and knew they had to tread carefully. "We're here to ensure everyone's safety, including yours. Please open the door," another officer urged. Inside the closet, Karen's resolve began to waver. The adrenaline that had once made her feel powerful was now giving way to dread. What had she done? She could hear the murmurs of the crowd outside, the whispers of concern mixed with judgment. Finally, the officers decided to take action. They carefully opened the door, revealing a disheveled Karen, her eyes wide with fear and defiance. "Stay back," she shouted, raising her arms as if to ward them off. The officers stepped inside, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "We're not here to hurt you. We just want to talk," one of them said gently. But Karen, feeling cornered, lashed out. In a moment of panic, she swung her arm, knocking over a shelf filled with dental supplies. The officers moved quickly, apprehending her before she could cause any more harm. "You're under arrest for assault and vandalism," one officer said, his tone firm but not unkind. As they led her out of the office, she caught a glimpse of the shocked faces of the other patients. The reality of her situation hit her hard. She had gone from a simple dental cleaning to a full-blown crisis, all because of her fears and paranoia. In the days that followed, the consequences of her actions became painfully clear. Karen faced multiple charges: assault with a deadly weapon, vandalism, and making threats. The dental practice, shaken by the incident, decided to pursue legal action against her, claiming damages for the chaos she had caused. As news of the incident spread, Karen found herself at the center of a media storm. The headlines were relentless. "Patient goes wild at dental office." "Woman arrested for assault with dental tools." The story took on a life of its own, and Karen's reputation was shattered overnight. She felt humiliated and alone. Friends and family reached out, but the whispers of judgment followed her everywhere. The once mundane task of a dental cleaning had spiraled into a nightmare that she could never have anticipated. In the courtroom, the weight of her actions bore down on her. The judge listened to the testimonies, and Karen could see the disappointment in the eyes of those who had once supported her. Her defense was weak. She had acted out of fear, but that didn't excuse her behavior. As the gavel came down, sealing her fate, Karen felt a surge of anger. It wasn't her fault. She had been wronged by the dental staff who didn't understand her pain. They had pushed her to this point, and now they were trying to make her the villain in their story. She had done nothing wrong. They had all conspired against her. Karen's life unraveled in the months that followed. The legal fees piled up, and the stress took a toll on her health. She lost her job as the incident became a part of her permanent record, and she struggled to find work in a community that had turned against her. The isolation was suffocating. Friends who once laughed with her now avoided her, and the shame of her actions haunted her every waking moment. But in her mind, it was still everyone else's fault. If only the staff had listened to her, if only they had treated her with the respect she deserved, none of this would have happened. The dental practice, meanwhile, recovered from the incident, but the scars remained. Staff members who had witnessed the chaos struggled with their own trauma, but Karen felt no sympathy for them. They had brought this upon themselves by not accommodating her needs. In the end, Karen's story became one of denial and blame. A routine dental cleaning had turned into a catastrophic event, leaving her with a shattered reputation and a life forever altered. The anger that had once fueled her actions morphed into a bitter resentment toward everyone around her. She had let her fears consume her, but in her mind, she was still the victim. As she sat alone in her small apartment looking out at the world that felt so distant, she refused to accept any responsibility for her actions. The battle she had fought was not just against the dental staff, but against a world that she believed had conspired against her. And in that battle, she remained convinced that she was the one who had been wronged, leaving her with a heart full of anger and a life forever marred by her refusal to see the truth.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.